Well, if that was Aaron Civale's last start as a Cleveland Guardian, it sure was a good one. He did it very fast as well, under 2 hours to get that one done as the Guardians win 5-1. We'll talk about Civale's big start. We'll see what that does for his trade value as the trade deadline is now officially just 1 week away in Major League Baseball. And the Guardians have a chance to do something they haven't done all year on Wednesday. We'll get into that all today on Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Guardians. I'm Justin Latta, your host, as Jeff continues to enjoy some vacation time with his family. This episode brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper Picks, and you can win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDON. You'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. A lot of good sleeper picks you could have made for the Guardians tonight. We'll talk about that more as the show goes on. Wanted to offer a quick programming note as well. We have a new content avenue coming up for the Locked On Sports Network, especially Locked On Guardians and some other Locked On Cleveland shows with some new places you'll be able to watch the show. With that, though, I will say we have to be very stringent about our 30-minute deadlines on these episodes. I know a lot of you have expressed to Jeff and myself that you guys like the longer episodes, and we don't mind giving them to you. We certainly would do more, but right now they want us to focus on 30-minute episodes for this new content avenue that we're going to be promoting here soon. That doesn't mean the end of long extra episodes, extra content for you all, though. Jeff and I do have in our back pocket, some ability to do some bonus content. So after we finish up a 30-minute episode, we may continue to record on our own as we're editing that episode as kind of a free bonus. It might be a YouTube-only thing. It might be extra 15, 20 minutes here and there. We might schedule a live show, something like that. We do have some options in our back pocket, but just want to let you guys know programming wise, we do have to keep things to a strict 30-minute for most regular episodes, and we will continue to give you bonus content, whether that's, some YouTube only, a live show, just some bonus stuff that comes up as we go along. Really good outing tonight from Aaron Civale. And look, there hasn't been a whole lot of smoke, but that's the thing about the Guardians, right? Not a lot of smoke surrounds them on the trade market. Plenty of people, including Jeff and myself, have talked about what a Aaron Civale trade would look like, if the Guardians would even consider doing that, because they reportedly want to add an arm, and they might need to with the way things are going. But the times they're not connected to any trade rumors is the times maybe something happens, and it really depends on if there are teams interested in Aaron Civale. There's not a lot of big name starting pitchers on the market. There's Marcus Stroman, there's Blake Snell. We talked about Seth Lugo. I saw Ken Rosenthal mention a piece about Logan Gilbert. I think that's kind of a pipe dream, really, but there's Shohei Ohtani, obviously, which is a whole different animal. We're not going to even talk about that for the Guardians, but there's not a lot of pitching to be offered out there. Civale is a long-term piece. Depends on if somebody wants that piece, if they want to commit to him long-term. But if this was his last start, as the trade deadline literally is less than a week away as you're listening to this on Wednesday, will that be his last start? He would be scheduled to pitch Sunday against the White Sox in the finale. That would be July 30th, just, some 36 hours away from the trading deadline at that point or so. It was a good last stand from Civale. He got into the 8th inning. This bullpen has not had a good month. A lot of guys have struggled. They are trying, and who knows, it's their second day in a row off. The thing with bullpen arms is you need to pitch to get out of the slump. I know everyone kind of cringes at that. Talking about, Tito always says the Guardians can't run from their guys they need. But in the case of relievers, it's true. You need to pitch those guys to figure it out. They can't go on side days like starters and work on stuff because they have to be available to pitch every day. So the days off are good, though. 2 days off in a row is good. We'll see whenever they pitch again. Probably Wednesday, considering Gavin Williams is pitching, and he has not gone super deep, although his last start against the Royals was his best career start. But Aaron Civale, it got into the 8th there, pitched through the 8th inning, I should say, and I actually thought there was a chance he could have come back up for the 9th inning. He was at 93 pitches And his 8th inning, he did give up a run, or I'm sorry, the run came in the 5th inning. He did have 2 on in the 8th inning, but those weren't really his fault. They weren't hard hit balls. He did give some hard hit balls in the 7th, and then the 8th inning, it was kind of a couple of goofy singles that just kind of dropped in that weren't really his fault. So I thought he had a chance to go out for the 9th inning, but a good start overall. He got 5 strikeouts. He did walk a pair, gave up 5 hits. The Guardians had less hits than they did a day ago and did manage to win. We'll get into the offense a little bit as well. Civale, this is a very Civale start for everything. We had all 4 pitches going. Really, it was kind of 3. It was the cutter, the curveball, and the 4-seam. 4-seam, not quite as much, but the curveball and the cutter both really worked for him well. A couple of swings and misses on each. Not a lot of swings and misses, but he threw him for strikes. He got some ground balls. That ground ball in the 8th inning was fantastic for him. Defense was good. He got a ground ball comebacker to him and was able to look the runner back to third before making the double play. Good, strong feed to second. Good, strong throw to first. A very good outing from him overall. I will say once again, the velocity remains down, even though he got 93 pitches. The cutter velocity, 2 miles off his season average. The 4-seam fastball, which, we threw 19 pitches of those, about 2.5 miles an hour off the pace. Curveball down a mile and a half. That is what it is. But the velocity thing is something we've been talking about. His last start, it kind of came down. So tonight he averaged 85 with the cutter, 85 and a half. The 4-seam, he averaged under 90 with. He has been under velocity-wise, the last couple times out. So, up until, let's say, July 7th, his last start before the break, he was throwing 88 with the cutter, 92 with the fastball. Since then, hit has all come down to 91 and then 85 and down to 85 again. So Civale's velocity, despite the good start, continues to stay down. Something to watch. As we said, it was a good performance. His last couple outings have been good. It's not like you could sit here and say, he's not pitching well because of the velocity, because that isn't the case. I mean, his start against the Rangers was fantastic. His start against the Pirates was good. His start against the Royals was good. So you can't sit here and say because of the velocity, he's not pitching well. He has literally pitched a fantastic July, a 1.72 ERA in 31 innings, 21 strikeouts, just 5 walks, and a whip under 1. He is having a fantastic month since he came off the injured list. That's been good for the Guardians. They've needed that. Teams will definitely, consider if they're considering trading from him, they will certainly look at the velocity in those terms. I had to look too because of how beleaguered this bullpen's kind of been. Have the Guardians had a whole lot of 8-inning starts this year by anybody? Which, not a lot of guys are going that deep in baseball anymore as it is, but had to look. And the last time the Guardians had an 8-inning outing was back on May 21st. That was Sunday Night Baseball against the Mets, and that was obviously a loss 2-1. Shane Bieber won 8 innings in that one. So it's been, over 2 months since the Guardians had a starter go 8. Bieber did pitch, by the way, into the 8th inning on June 17th. It was 7 1/3. That was the game that I think Corbin Carroll got him for the 4th time against the Diamondbacks, and they lost that game as well. So the Guardians haven't had a whole lot of luck with pitchers going into the 8th inning or winning in the 8th inning. The last time Aaron Civale won 8 innings in a game, period, was over 2 years ago. It was June 11th, 2021. In a win against the Mariners. So that's the deepest start he's made in quite some time. So that's good to see. Teams will look at things differently and see what the price is for Civale. Like I said, there hasn't been any smoke there, but he's pitching very well right now. And if the Guardians got a good offer, I know they continue to say they want to add pitching, and it's hard for them to subtract because they don't know, when Bieber, when McKenzie are coming back in September. Cal Quantrill maybe ahead of that. We got 3 rookies innings to manage, but that's a good outing, and teams will look at the velocity and they will make their evaluations based off that and see what they think he can give them if they're interested in what the price the Guardians set for him, which is also going to be based highly on his club control, which he has a couple of years left, and his injury history does loom in there as well. But he is pitching pretty well right now. The results are good despite the velocity, and like I said, teams will evaluate those things all together and kind of create what they think is fair for that. And we'll see if they match the Guardians price tag for Aaron Civale a week from now. I'd be very curious to see if anything pops up. Like I said, there's been no smoke at all other than people just kind of speculating, including ourselves and other places. But we'll find out. It should be an interesting week. There have been other rumors, other names connected to the Guardians, at least, in theory, floated out there. Emmanuel Clase did pitch the 9th inning. He was fantastic. He was throwing 99-100. He hadn't pitched since Saturday. I know even I was saying, like, okay, well, maybe if they spread this out and they get above, 5-1, I don't want to see, you want to see them not have a chance to make it a safe situation and give Clase another bit of rest. But he did come in because he hadn't pitched since Saturday. So he does get a little bit of work in there in the 9th inning, but it was quick and it was easy and he looked fantastic. We got to talk about Bo Naylor still. We got to talk about some other interesting names, and we have to talk about the thing that the Guardians are trying to do for the first time all year on Wednesday, still to come on today's Locked On Guardians. We haven't gotten to Bo Naylor yet, but if you had taken him on Sleeper on Tuesday night, you could have won very big. If you want to win 100 times your money on daily fantasy baseball, Sleeper is now offering up to 100-time payout for up to 8 pick contests. So you can choose as many as 8 players that you would like, and you could pick more or less of your favorite baseball stats like homers, strikeouts, hits, and more. You could have taken Bo Naylor to hit more than 2 home runs. You would have got 100 times or more than 1 home run. He hit 2. So you could have gotten 100 times the payout on your bet for that one. If you get your picks right, you can win big. If you use promo code Locked On, you'll get a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Sleeper is currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. Guardians and Royals back at it at 1:10 on Wednesday as the Guardians look for the series victory. You can listen to the action while you work on your SiriusXM app by just searching Guardians. All right, big day for Bo Naylor. Obviously, the 2 home runs, like we talked about, you should definitely consider him if you're going to, check out Sleeper, and he should play on Wednesday. I'm pretty sure there's a right-hander going for the Royals. We'll hope he's in the lineup there. 2 home runs. Look what happens when you hit the ball over the fence. You win. I'm not saying you have to hit a ton of home runs, but you got to hit some. And the Royals did hit home runs on Monday. The Guardians didn't. Bo Naylor was the big power guy on Tuesday night. Just fantastic at bats for Bo Naylor. I mean, he's down in the count in the first at bat to Zach Greinke, gets himself back into the count. I have to look. I think he was down, I want to say 0-2 to Zach Greinke. Yeah, so he was down 0-2. He took a called strike fastball in the outside corner. He fouled off a fastball that was high, and then he took 2 sinkers that were out of the zone from Zach Greinke. One was neither of them were competitive, but that 5th pitch, he got himself a fastball back in the middle of the plate, and he absolutely hammered it. So fantastic to see from him. And then the next at bat, again, he was ahead in this one. He took a called strike, so he was behind 0-1. Then he laid off 3 pitches in a row, so he got it to 3-1. And actually, the 5th pitch was barely a strike. I was saying that Bo Naylor does such a good job of making pitchers come into his zone. That's part of his approach change back from when he was in Akron a couple of years ago when he was struggling with the strikeouts and just in the overall hitting a lot of pop-ups because he's trying to hit a lot of fly balls. But at times, Bo Naylor can definitely have a passive approach to the point where there are calls on the corners that he is going to take for strike 3 because he is not going to swing. It's kind of like Nolan Jones's approach. I know Nolan Jones is a hot topic for some right now, hard one to take, but Nolan Jones is kind of like that, where he takes a lot of close strikes in the outside corner because they're not pitches he can drive. That's a good thing for a hitter like Bo. If he doesn't feel like he is going to hit the ball with authority, and that's a good approach for someone on this team to have, because you've got so many guys who are just willing to put any ball in play they can make contact with. Bo Naylor is kind of the opposite of that. So he's a really nice, change from a lot of the other guys in the lineup. He does a great job of waiting for a pitch to come in that he can do damage with. Now, it's not always going to happen. He'll get better at it as he faces different pitchers. And obviously, Zach Greinke's not having a good year. But look, Ryan Yarbrough's not exactly a fantastic pitcher, and the Guardians couldn't do much against him, even though Bo Naylor wasn't given the chance to. And Tito said after the game, too, we know Bo's going to play a lot, and He mentioned Cam's defense, and he mentioned how hot David Fry has been lately. And, David Fry definitely deserves opportunities, but 2 for 3 for Bo Naylor with 2 home runs, a big performance from him, just 2 fantastic at-bats there. Really, in the third at-bat, truthfully, the third at-bat was just as good. I mean, he had a ball that he hit to left field that had a chance to went pretty deep. Hit at 339 feet at 96 miles an hour. Another good at bat. I mean, he took a ball, then he got it was down 1-2, and that curveball he almost flipped to left field. I think if that ball's hit anywhere else, he might have had a hit. So really good at bats from Bo Naylor in this one, and he should be in the lineup on Wednesday. We really hope. And I also do want to point out that the lineup as a whole had a much better approach against Zach Greinke. They weren't as over aggressive with him. He was in the strike zone a lot. They didn't chase out of the zone against him to try to make contact with bad pitches, which is something they did against Ryan Yarbrough on Monday quite a bit. They only struck out twice against Zach Greinke. They put a lot of hard contact in play in this one. And then at the end of the game, too, we're talking about guys who are playing, guys who aren't. And Gabby Arias is getting an inconsistent amount of playing time. Tough for him, whatever he's working on, whatever he is going through, with the coaching staff or with the swing. There's 2 games now in the last 3 days that Gabby Arias has come in for Med Rosario late in the game. And I think I did hear someone say that that's a conversation Tito had with Ahmed, that they would start, finding opportunities for Gabby to come in late in the game for defense for Ahmed. So Ahmed being the good teammate everyone says he is, I'm sure took that in stride. And it's a good change for this team to have Gabby Arias at shortstop. Whatever he does offensively, I still think the offensive upside is there. He's got to have consistent playing time to prove it, as does Bo Naylor against lefties. And that is the question too Wednesday. I guess I shouldn't immediately say that Bo Naylor is going to be in the lineup on Wednesday, because they played a night game on Tuesday, and Wednesday's a day game. Hopefully the fact that the game was an hour and 59 minutes means that he wasn't squatting as much and he can play on Wednesday afternoon. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Cam Gallagher on Wednesday, which would just be hilarious and fitting for how the season has continued to go. But Gabby was in there late for defense. That was really good to see. Another tough night for Josh Naylor, his brother, 0 for 4 again. He was just missing on a couple of them. Jose did have an RBI single. He is still getting kind of caught in between. It's been kind of tough for him lately. They need to get him going again. He is not having a good July so far, and they're not going to win a whole lot of games if he continues that. Josh Bell, 1 for 3 with a double. He drove in. He also scored a run on the Will Brennan base hit. So Josh Bell, his numbers continue to sort of trend in the right direction as well. If he has a good second half, I really am curious to see what happens with him over the offseason, depending on how good he could be. If he could parlay that second half into a better deal, I don't really know. It's going to be very funny to see how this whole thing plays out with Josh Bell. But overall, pretty solid offensive night. 8 hits, 5 runs. Obviously, Bo Naylor, the big star. Great stat, by the way, from Sarah Langs, who's one of the best, I think is the best MLB researcher out there. According to Sarah Langs research, Bo Naylor at 23 years old and 154 days is the 3rd youngest Cleveland player with a multi-homer game as a catcher. The only guys younger than Bo to hit 2 home runs in a game for Cleveland were Hank Rosowski back in 1947. He was 21 years old and 269 days. And then, of course, the great Ray Fosse, who did it at 23 years old and 50 days back in 1970. Obviously, Ray Fosse had a very promising career before the Pete Rose All-Star Game slide happened. So hopefully better things ahead for Bo Naylor in terms of multi-home run games and hopefully All-Star appearances too, since guys are not allowed to slide into or ram into catchers like that, like they once were at one point. All right. We'll talk about some trade targets. The Guardians signed a minor league reliever as well on Tuesday, although the team hasn't confirmed that yet. Guardians still trying to do something they haven't been able to do all season so far. And we'll talk about Wednesday's matchup in a little bit here on Locked On Guardians. All right. I don't want to take everything that I should say Guardians and Royals 110 on Thursday. Listen to the game while you work, while you're driving, while you're on lunch on your Sirius XM app. Just search for Guardians on your app. It's pretty easy to find. I don't want to take every article out there as like any kind of rumor, or it's because it's not a rumor. This is not a rumor. MLB.com and other outlets will do this where they write one player that, enter some sort of scenario or statistical analysis here for each team. So it could be this team's, all 30 teams' top trade assets, or one surprise draft pick by all 30 teams. The MLB.com does this. So they can write a quick article that gets a hit from all 30 fan bases very quickly. And they include one player. This one doesn't necessarily do that, but it was a piece by Mark Feinstein again on MLB.com. It talked about 17 guys that could be traded. And again, it could be. And he lists possible targets for each of these guys, right? So it could be a number of teams that might be interested in this player. There are 2 players out of the 17 that he wrote about that he put, possible fits for the Guardians. I think it's at least worth talking about them, even though it's not a rumor or they may not be a real fit, but these are 2 interesting targets to think about. The first one was the Rockies' Randall Grichuk, who is a free agent at the end of the year. So he is a rental bat. He is a complimentary bat, although he can play every day if you really need him to. And I think this is the kind of target the Guardians would go after, depending on the cost. He is having an interesting year. He is with Colorado, so, bear in mind some home road splits. In 59 games, he has a 115 WRC plus, a slugging percentage of 482, which would make him second on the team, just behind Josh Naylor and actually above Jose Ramirez, believe it or not. Yikes. He's got 6 homers this year, so not hitting for a ton of power, at least. I mean, the 482 slugging is a lot of power for Cleveland, but down for him a little bit. There are some splits involved, like I said, but with him playing in Colorado at home, the splits aren't even that bad, though. At home and in Colorado, he does have a 117 WRC plus and a 914 OPS. On the road, he's still at a 115 WRC plus and an OPS of 792. So the 792 OPS on the road is still pretty solid. And against lefties, listen to these numbers. 1,000 OPS against lefties, a 151 WRC plus, and an 11% strikeout rate, 8.6% walk rate. Against righties, he strikes out almost 25% of the time, a 772 OPS. So still a very playable player against righties, still playable away from Coors. And a lot of times, too, remember with Coors Field is that it's not, they get a higher batting average because of how big that outfield is at Coors Field. It's not necessarily the ball does carry a little bit more, but they have higher BABIP at home because of the outfield space. But also, it takes guys time to adjust on the road from Coors. When you play at that altitude, breaking stuff doesn't move as the same as it does on the road, so you're not seeing it consistently. So when you go to LA or you go to San Diego, the ball moves differently and you have to readjust. And it's hard to go back and forth, which is why you see that. So maybe consistent playing time away from Coors would kind of bring him to the middle of those 2 things. Could be an interesting player, I think. Grichuk is a right-handed bat. He has hit for power in the past. He has drawn some walks. He is striking out the least in his career over the last couple of years, I will say. So that's good to see. His walk rate is the best it's ever been. All the stuff under the hood looks pretty good in terms of the bat. The chase rate, he does chase a little bit. There is some whiffs there. Not a good defender by any means at all. The outfield above average is third percentile, so it's pretty bad. Outfield jump is bad. Does have good arm strength. Nice complimentary bat. I don't know what the cost is to get a guy like Randall Grichuk. It's interesting. I don't know whose playing time he kind of usurps. Do you sit more of Will Brennan? Does Will Brennan move to center field? Do you send Will Brennan down? That clogs the outfield in AAA. That doesn't really help you figure out what's going on next. Like, that's the hard part. Is I know this is a frustrating year and this team needs upgrades, but like if you're sending Will Brennan to AAA, and maybe he could use a refresher anyway because he is getting a little bit over antsy at the plate again. I don't know. I don't know if that really helps him a ton though. Like, what do you do with that guy if he goes back to AAA? What are you accomplishing? What are you learning about next year? It still kind of kicks the can down the road. But Grichuk's a good player if you're trying to make some additions this year to try to win a little bit. The other name I thought was interesting on his list as well that Mark Fine said could be a fit for the Guardians is Jack Flaherty. Jack Flaherty has had a kind of a rough year for the Cardinals. They seem like they want to move him. He's a free agent at the end of the year. He was once one of their best prospects. His velocity is kind of falling off these days. He used to throw 95, 96. Now he's kind of throwing, 92, 94. 93 overall, still not bad. Doesn't miss a ton of bats. Under a strikeout per inning. He does have 4.47 walks per nine. It's a double-digit walk rate. So the control's not good. His ERA is 4.39. FIP is 4.17. And let's see if he's got any better this month of July. In July, it's not great in July. So he hasn't really improved. He has a 4.05 FIP in July. The walks have come down a little bit, which is good. He's only walked 8 guys in 24 innings. That's an improvement for him. 22 strikeouts. Teams are still hitting pretty well off him though this month. I'd be interested to see if the Guardians could bring him in. I don't know. He's a free agent at the end of the year, and I don't know that 1.5 months is enough to fix a guy like this who used to be a top prospect. If the Guardians could do that, it would be kind of frustrating actually, because you go out and you fix him for the final month and a half of the season, he becomes a good pitcher for you. He carries some innings. Maybe they get in the playoffs, which, by the way, I was keeping track of the Twins Mariners scores. I was recording this, and it looks like the Mariners have taken an 8-6 lead, and they are playing. Oh, I'm sorry, 9-7. Mariners wins. The Guardians pick up the game too. How about that? While we're recording, Guardians are back to 3 in the division now. So maybe Flaherty helps you out with innings the rest of the year. Maybe he gets you. Maybe he pitches the game in the playoffs if you make it there. I don't know. If the Guardians found a way to fix him though, and he goes back onto the market in the offseason, you get nothing for him. You just gave up something for nothing with Flaherty, because he's going to go into the free agent market. Maybe you re-sign him. I don't know, especially with the situations with Beaver and McKenzie. Who knows what they're going to offer next year? That's a tough question to answer. So maybe if that trade did materialize somehow, I don't really know. They have made trades in the past with the Oscar Mercado, but maybe if they found a way to work with him to improve his stock at the end of the year, maybe he would re-sign here and you'd have a piece for next year, at least on a one-year prove-it deal. He's only 27. He'll play all next year at age 28. So he comes back on a one-year deal if you really help him out, and he goes back onto the market for his age 29 season. That still gives him time to land a big contract, especially if you kind of improve things with him. And he is a talented pitcher, and the Guardians, this is the kind of work they have always excelled with. So could be an interesting target. Like I said, don't take those for anything serious. It's just a guy writing an article in MLB.com, trying to connect some dots and trying to get some clicks, but still an interesting couple of ideas. I would not be against either of those guys right now, especially Flaherty. I'd still trade Civale though, if there was a good offer coming in for him. I don't think it would take a whole lot. The pitching market's going to be very pricey. So the Flaherty thing is interesting. The Grichuk thing maybe has some legs, but again, I don't know whose playing time he takes, how you handle that. That's all very, very tricky. All right. The Guardians reportedly signed Amir Garrett to a minor league deal on Tuesday. He was let go by the Royals at the end of July. He has a 3.33 ERA this season. Now, under the hood, that doesn't really match up. He's got a 1.73 FIP in 24 1/3 innings. The fastball velocity, is still pretty good. It's still 70th percentile. He still does throw, 96, 95, 96. That's pretty good from him. Control's never been his biggest friend there, which is not the Guardian specialty either. He was not good in July before he got released. So we'll see what happens. He's supposed to go to Columbus. We'll find out with him when the team officially announces that. Maybe he's an option for this bullpen. Hey, the Guardians, for the first time on Wednesday, will have a chance to win their 3rd straight series in a row. Believe it or not, we keep talking about how this team continues to stub its toe and just never put 2 feet forward. They beat the Pirates. They beat the Phillies. They have a chance on Wednesday to beat the Royals. It would be their first time this year winning 3 straight series. They have won back-to-back series 5 times this year. They have not won 3 in a row, so that'd be a big accomplishment. Gavin Williams and Alec Marsh do battle on Wednesday for the Guardians before they head off to Chicago. Hopefully Gavin Williams can repeat his success from his last time out against the Royals. Thank you all for listening, subscribing, rating, reviewing, downloading. It helps every day. Check us out later in the week. And thank you for listening to today's Locked On Guardians.